today's practice has to do with opening and accessing the space of the heart. And I think this is one of those critical points I try to make a lot in my classes, that in yoga we talk a lot about opening the heart. And that's awesome. That's absolutely, we want to get into the space of the heart. But we want to do more than just give it lip service. We need to work really hard to get into that space. It is very protected by our ribs. And in fact, many times we talk about the ribs as being the rib cage, something that actually holds the heart away from the rest of the world. So it's of utmost importance to learn how to access that space through the ribs, unlocking the space of the heart, right? So opening up that cage and unlocking that space, and then diving even deeper into what I refer to as the center channel. And that's where Kundalini, the energy, the feminine energy that's within us, rises. It comes right through the center of the heart. So we can't get to that heart center unless we come through our awareness of what blocks it, right? And you might think of the ribs as Maya, as that kind of veil that is the shadow of being manifested. If we are light and that center channel is access to that light, to that divine essence energy, we know it's there, but also we are manifested as something from it. Similar to light coming through a prism, and on the other side of the prism, there's this band of rainbows, maybe different rainbows in different areas. And if we're one aspect of that rainbow, to come into the light, we have to travel backwards. And we have to transcend the prism and come into the space where the light meets the rainbow. And that's the space of the heart. So coming into your opening meditation, I just want you to take that visual of that you are an aspect of the rainbow. And you are coming into this heart, which is actually shaped kind of like a prism in your body, flipped upside down. Notice what it feels like to access it, what it feels like to be in that space. Is there any kind of sense of that not being you? That you're in a space that is somehow separate from your self-identity? And just pause there with that question and just be present to it for the next few moments. This idea of opening the heart and accessing it through our physiology is what we might call transactional knowledge. And it is a sense of moving through something as object. We, the subject, remain separate from the object in a transactional relationship. But in contrast, self-knowledge is to know who or what the subject really is without objectifying it. So to even speak of the heart is to try to put it into that objective or transactional knowledge. The heart is becoming love. And for one more quote before we begin, this from a heart surgeon. He says, I know for a fact that love exists. And I would hope that anyone with a child, a parent, or a spouse would too. But I don't have a clue how science would begin to prove it. So becoming love is really our goal. But because we have objectified the heart space, we're going to move through it in our physical body. And we're going to begin by taking our dowel and becoming aware of the back heart space. So as you're ready, and if you need to shift your position at all, feel free to shift. But we're going to take that dowel around behind our back. And as you take it around your back side, come just to, if you can kind of get a sense of where your shoulder blades are, come just to the base of the shoulder blades. And that's going to be right behind your heart. And then you're going to just hook your elbows over the stick and kind of push the stick into that space so you can tactily connect with it. And then what I'd like you to do is push back with your ribs into the stick. So the stick isn't forcing you into a back bend, right? You're going to stay aligned. If you can imagine that prism shape pointed upside down in your heart space, you're trying to take the point of the prism and point it right towards the mid space of your seat. So the root space. And we're going to start with some pranayama practice here. We're going to begin by breathing a little slower, a little more fully, and exhaling completely. I like to do like a 4, 4, 4, 4 count. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4. But you can create your own pattern, or maybe you just go with what feels right for you. When we inhale, we want to direct our inhale into the stick so you can maybe feel those back ribs expand. Hold that expansion for a moment. And then slowly exhaling, feeling the ribs recoil from the stick. Getting narrower, becoming more tense as they contract, as they recoil. And then holding the end of that exhale for a count of 4. Again, adjusting that as you need to for what's right for you. Taking 1 or 2 more of these more rhythmic held breaths. And then we're going to add one more aspect to it. And I'm going to add maybe one more little challenge for the shoulders in that you take your hands to the end of the stick. And not only are you now pushing the stick into your ribs and pushing the ribs back into the stick, but now it's almost as if you're trying to expand the stick, as if you're trying to stretch it between your hands. Your shoulders become a little bit more engaged on the back body. And with that engagement, you might have to work a little bit harder to expand your ribs behind you as you inhale. Let the inhale be held. Exhale completely. And here's your second challenge. During that held exhale at the end of it, when you pause, try to, without inhaling, expand your ribs again. So there's some active expansion in the ribs without the breath. It's a kind of bandha or lock called Uddiyana. And you're just going to play in it. It's a very difficult lock to do. It has to do also with the throat, and to pretend you're inhaling without actually inhaling means you have to kind of bind the throat and close up through the glottis. So let's try a few of those. We're going to inhale slowly, completely to count of 4 or whatever your count is. Feel the ribs expand. Hold that expansion. Really contract through the shoulders. Exhale completely to the count of 4. Feeling the recoil of the ribs, strong shoulders. At the end of that exhale, hold and try to inhale. And then let the inhale come. If you need to take a break between those binds, those holds, and that expansion of the ribs, take a couple of breaths between. This is hard work. This is what it takes to get into this protective space and really have access to the source of that light of the prism, right? So inhale, hold. Exhale completely. Exhale, hold, and try to expand. One more time, inhale, hold. Exhale completely. And try to expand. And then release. You can set the stick aside, roll your shoulders out a bit. We're going to just shift our orientation of our seat. I'm going to straighten my legs out in front of me. If you are sitting on the floor, if you were sitting cross-legged, maybe you shift too. I'm going to just put a blanket under my knees so I can feel my knees. So again, sometimes these props are just useful for tactility, so we remember different parts of our bodies. But sometimes it's really, really useful to also help support our bodies. So finding what you need. Now we're going to take the stick back up again. And what we're going to do is we're going to just bring our hands in front of us for just a moment and just play with shoulder rotation here. So hands in front. When the palms turn up and the thumbs turn out, you can kind of see your biceps. So that's turning your arms into what we call external rotation, or your thumbs pointing outward. And I want you to pause there and just feel that work in your shoulders. Maybe notice how your breath feels in that position. And then internal rotation, where the palms start to turn down and the thumbs point in, inward rotation. And you can maybe take that a little further so your thumbs start to point down. And you can kind of see how your biceps start to turn in and they point towards the midline of the body. And again, we're just gonna take a couple of breaths there. And we're gonna just kind of turn the shoulders through these rotations. And you can go at whatever pace feels right for you. But one thing I'm noticing, I'm experiencing, is that when I turn my thumbs out, I can feel those shoulder blades engage a little bit more in my upper back, but they also kind of move inward. They kind of come tighter on my upper back. When I take it from that external rotation to the internal rotation, my shoulder blades kind of open up on my upper back, but they sneak into my neck, right? They kind of come up. There's a little more room in my upper back, but not as much room in my throat. So just taking this a couple more times. And what we want to do is find both space and strength. So we're going to take the stick with those thumbs turned out, because that gives us a little more strength on the upper back. And we're going to act as if we're pulling the stick apart. But I also want you to act as if you're trying to break the stick and internally rotate your arms, right? So we're really doing both isometrically. We're pulling the stick out with the arms in this external rotation, but also kind of pushing into the pinky side of your hand and acting as if you're trying to break the stick, right? So there's a lot happening here. Take a moment, notice your shoulders, see if you can keep them out of your neck as we slowly bring that stick overhead. Come to where you can Notice if you're arching your back, and rather than moving your arms and shoulders, you're moving your spine. So root down, press through your legs, reach up, work through those shoulders. Take a couple of breaths here in this extension. If you feel like you could move your arms a little closer together, challenging your shoulders a little bit more, maybe do so. Couple more breaths here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our arms as wide as we can on our stick. We're going to bring our stick to one side. So one hand comes right to the floor. The other arm is alongside your ear. Now take those same actions as you did overhead, trying to stretch the stick, grasping the stick, and trying to maybe even break the stick. And we're gonna start to really feel that top shoulder here. Long spine along your stretch side. You'll feel the contraction along your lower side. And now we're gonna play with the shoulder around the ribs. So staying active, take that top arm a little forward, pivoting the stick. Trying not to turn your chest down, rather turn your shoulder a little bit down. Feel the stretch on the upper back and take a couple of breaths. I'm sweating doing this work. This is, again, a super strong but very protected space. So if we really want to access its energy, feel the lightness of the heart, there's some work involved. And we're going to take that stick so it's back up alongside our ear. Now we're going to take a little bit of a back bend. And again, try not to rotate your spine. Pivot the shoulder so that it's behind you a bit. Think about how you're engaging through the stick. Taking a couple of breaths, kind of feeling maybe a little bit of that tension and strength across the front of the chest. Last breath in that little reach back. And then when you're ready, we're going to come back up, back to the center. If you need to take a break between sides, do so. You can work a little bit again into that closer work. Just notice if there's any sense of difference between the two shoulders, whether you're working or you're resting. And then we're going to take it to the other side. So again, I'm taking my hands as wide as I can on the stick. I'm going to take that side bend to the second side. So my spine is not straight, it is curved. I am in a lateral stretch here. And I'm just working with my arm alongside my ear to start. Finding that action as much as I can on the stick. And again, the actions are pulling the stick apart. That external rotation, holding my palms on the stick. But at the same time, there's some isometrics here, working towards almost like I'm trying to break the stick at the center. And then we're gonna bring that top arm forward. No movement in the spine here. Try not to spiral your chest down. Move the shoulder so that you can feel that stretch on your upper back. Take a couple of breaths there. You can play with the length of your inhale, maybe a pause, the length of your exhale, maybe a pause. If you feel like working into that Uddiyana Bandha, you can absolutely play in that space as well. We're going to take the arm back up alongside the ear and then pulling the stick behind the head a bit here. If you're able to, just working where you can. Breathing, the space opens up. A lot of work here. I'm sweating, coming back to the center. And again, maybe you hold the stick wide, maybe you do that center work in the stick, or maybe you're just ready to give your shoulders a little break. Hopefully you feel a kind of lightness kind of starting to come up through the shoulders. We're going to give our forearms, our wrists a little bit of love. And we are going to transition into some standing work. So as you feel ready, We're gonna come up to standing. And I'm just gonna invite you to come up in any way that feels right for you. I'm gonna take a quick drink of water. There's lots of time. If there's any movements that just feel so good to you, take them right now. And we will need our stick as we come up to standing as well. So bringing your stick with you. What we're going to do is we're going to begin with some half forward folds, just like we were doing sitting on the ground. We were in Dandasana or stick pose, right? So now we're in standing pose, and we're going to use the stick to kind of drive some length along both sides of our body and to find strength in our shoulders. So first of all, because we're standing, we're just going to take a second and just get grounded through our feet. So you kind of can come up on your toes, come up on your heels, roll through the balls of the feet, the blades, the outside pinky toe area, the ball of the foot by the big toe, the arch area. And we want to have our feet about hip width apart. So hips are where the points of our iliac crests are. And if we point down, we're going to have our feet about hip width apart. And to the best of your capacity, have your feet aligned so they're pointing forward. And then play with where your weight falls. So I'm holding the stick for balance here. And I'm just playing with where my weight falls by shifting my hips back and bringing my hips forward. So when my hips are forward, there's a little more weight in the balls of the feet. Maybe you can also feel a little bit the hamstrings contracting. When I'm back here, there's a little stretch in the backs of the hips, the weight goes to the heels, right? So find where you are vertical. The weight is basically going into the heels, but the balls of the feet are active and pressing into the ground. And then we're going to take the stick out about arm's length, and we're going to place our hands lightly on the top of the stick, right? Now, as you find the top of the stick, start to find your shoulders. And I know where my shoulders are now after that warm up, wow. And I want to find them, again, kind of around the heart space, a little wide, but contracted and kind of connected to those back ribs so I can feel some support. And then I'm going to start to take a hip hinge. And as I hip hinge, the stick is leveraging my arms up overhead. You can see my butt moves back, right? And you know, we're not going to worry about that right now. But just notice that feeling of shifting a little bit more to your heels. And we're just going to take some repeats of this movement. Getting to know hip hinging. Remember, try not to put a hole in your hand. Try to keep your shoulders engaged and just allow the hands simply to be a guide with the stick to coming into that overhead reach. Now we're going to take one or two more. Just moving in and out of it, right? Becoming familiar with it, feeling what's happening in the shoulders, in the feet, in the hips. And then we're going to hold. And while we're holding here, and again, keeping the hands as light as possible, I'd like you to play with shifting your weight forward just a little bit more so your butt's not maybe behind your heels. And you're going to just play with that shift a little bit, but behind the heels, but more over the heels. You might feel your toes start to dig in, and instead of digging with your toes, dig in more with your heels. Get more active into your heels. And you might start to feel the hamstrings, the back of your bottom, becoming more firm. One thing we are going to try to avoid is rounding the spine in order for that to happen, right? And we're going to actually use the stick here in just a moment to keep that from happening. All right. So find where your challenge is, where you feel like your toes want to dig in. Your hands maybe get too heavy on the stick. Pause, dig in with the heels, engage the shoulders, and find that action of the hips. And then slowly come out of it, come upright. And see if you can feel the contraction of the hips. Now we're going to do that same work, but instead of having the stick guide us forward and stretch our shoulders, we're going to take the stick around behind us. And this is where we're going to kind of guard against the shift that happens in our upper back and our thorax or in our pelvis. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the stick alongside the back of our bodies. There are 3 curves to the back of the body, from the head to the thorax, the space behind your heart, and then to the sacrum. And we're going to place the stick along those curves. And what I'd like you to do as you place the stick there is try to lengthen up the stick through your head and then strengthen with the stick through your shoulders. So again, here's that action of holding the stick, pulling as if you're trying to pull it apart, and acting like you're trying to break it a little bit. So I've just got one hand behind my neck, one hand in the curve of my lumbar spine. I'm lengthening the space above the heart, below the heart, and to either side of the heart. And then I'm going to start to take that hip hinge. And again, the tendency is to shift my butt back so that I'm not working as hard through my legs. And we're just going to kind of go in and out of it a little bit, and we'll let that shift happen. If the heart is really just a source of our energy, then what we are is energetic connections between the earth and the source of light. And so this is giving us that connection to the earth. We're going to hold that half forward fold. Think about lengthening and opening up the space of our heart, digging into our heels, and moving to our challenge point with our hamstrings. So trying to bring the butt forward. If you feel your toes dig in harder with your heels. Wherever you are is perfect. We're going to take about 2 to 3 of those long, slow breaths here. See if you can breathe into where the stick was originally behind your heart, going from right to left. And as you exhale, maybe you make the length of your spine longer from the bottom to top. Holding that exhale, a little bit more length. Holding the inhale, a little bit more width. Last breath here. We'll come up and release. And again, you can roll your shoulders out a little bit. We're going to shift our position here to a wide stance. And we will be turning our toes in just a moment. But first of all, just start with your toes forward. And we're going to just take that half forward fold in this position with our legs wide. And we'll just take it back and forth a few times. And what we're just discovering again is the hip hinge. And that hip hinge forward is kind of what we're most used to. We know how to hold our spine steady, right? We know what the hip hinge is. We know how to find our hamstrings. With the legs a little wider, you might feel a little lighting up in the inner thighs. And then what we're going to do is after you've done a few of those, we're going to pivot the feet into Trikonasana or triangle pose feet. So one toe turns towards the short edge of your mat. The other toe turns a bit in. Again, you're going to dig in with those heels. The tendency when our toes turn is that our bodies turn as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the stick about arm's lengths out. And as you're ready, use the traction of your feet and your hand on the stick to turn your body forward. Think about that work we did, lengthening our spine from tip of tail to crown of head. And you can place your top hand, your free hand, maybe on the top of your head, Or I kind of like to place it kind of right here around my belly and hip and just remind me to stay forward. And along spine, now we're going to take that hip hinge, but it's moving to the side. And we're going to take it several times. And we're just going to familiarize ourselves with this movement feeling. Remember, the hand on the stick is light. See if you can find the work in your shoulder to create that light. So when I say light, you know, I'm feeling this heaviness, the load of my hand and my arm on the stick, and the release of that. But I'm also feeling this expansion and this lightness in my heart, because when I engage the shoulder, I pull energy up through the heart, starting to feel that prism of expansion. So remember, the prism is pointing down. Point down is the base of your heart. And we're feeling all the rainbows coming out in all the directions of the prism. So there's 4 sides of it, right? We work front to back, we're working side to side. Good, so we've got this feeling of hip hinging. Now we're gonna take the stick around behind our back and you know, maybe grab it in the opposite way. We'll be doing both sides here, so you know, it doesn't really matter which way you grab it. You're going to, again, as you grab it, lengthen up, find some strength with the stick. Remember to turn your body forward. And taking the hip hinge, now notice if your body moves into that lateral bend, if you feel the stick moving off your hips or away from your head and ribs. We're really trying to maintain the space of our heart, front, back, right, left, and also find that connection from earth to that space. We'll take 1 or 2 more hip hinges with the stick behind us. And then we're going to challenge ourselves to have the stick above our heads. So again, I'm thinking about how we're grabbing the stick. We're going to take that external rotation in our arms. You can take the stick wide if that feels better for your shoulders, or more narrow. We need to bring the stick up overhead. So find what's right for you. Pull out on the stick like you're trying to stretch it. Grasp the stick firmly with your hands so the external rotation is held. And then as if you're trying to break it, as if you're trying to turn your hands back into that internal rotation, lengthen up through the spine. Think about the stick behind your back. Think about the stick that guided you into your side bend, and press into your heels. Take the side bend. You can move in and out of it a few times. See if you can hold this position. Take a couple of breaths. Remember, try to keep your body forward, the stick extended strongly overhead, the breath at your ribs. Front, back, right, left. Inhale, hold. Exhale, hold. And then as you're ready, come up. Wow, bring that stick down. Turn your toes. And you can just take a moment doing, again, just maybe some swaying, some rolling out of the shoulders, a little bit of forward fold, using the stick however you want to. We're going to come to our second side here. So we start with just turning the toes. Stick is at kind of the end of your arm, light on the hand. Notice if your body turned with your toes. See if you can turn back to the long side of your mat. And that takes digging in with the heels, and especially this leg, contracting that hamstring, right? Long side body. And we begin by just taking those hip hinges from this side. This is my side that I have an injury in the hip, so I'm going to be a little more conservative with how much I move. So finding just right what's happening in your body. Right side and left side aren't always in balance. Balance is something we seek. Homeostasis is something that's present in our body, but it's a wave. It's never static, right? So balance isn't static either. As you experience this movement, stay rooted to your heels, strong in your spine, in your shoulder. Keep the heart light. Be that light-hearted being. All right. After we've taken several of those hip hinges, now we're going to bring the stick around behind your head. And again, maybe arrange your hands in an alternative way. You know, if you always go top arm up, bottom arm down, you know, maybe you shift it, right? If you don't remember what you did, then it doesn't matter because you're fine, right? So maybe your shoulders just have a preference and you're going to honor that preference. Lengthen up the stick with your spine. So try to make yourself an inch taller. Keep in contact with those three curves to the back, those three kyphotic curves. So it's sacrum, ribs, back of head, the occiput. Keep your body turned so you're facing the lateral side of your mat, and hip hinge, becoming more aware of what you're doing in your heart space. Are you collapsing on your lower side? Does your stick leave your sacrum? Can you stay strong? Stay present. Notice what that feels like. And then after you've kind of gotten that experience, that tactile experience with what's happening in your spine, and the spine, of course, is really creating what happens along the center channel. It creates the direction of energy to the base of the heart, to the base of that prism. We're going to bring the stick overhead this time, externally rotating our grip, finding a firmness in that grip, extending the arms, pulling the stick apart, bringing the arms towards overhead. And again, little, as you grasp it firmly in the palms of your hands, little sense as if you're trying to internally rotate. So our shoulders are fully engaged, and keeping awareness of hip hinge, keeping awareness of spinal length, finding the strength in our shoulders. We take our hip hinge. And again, you can go in and out of it, or you can hold. As you hold, it's not static. You're constantly adjusting what's happening in my feet, what's happening in my torso, what's happening in my shoulders and my spine, and what's happening in my breath. Can I take a full rib breath? Thinking about where I felt that stick behind my ribs, thinking about the front, the back, the undersides of my shoulders, holding that exhale. Maybe playing a little bit with that bandha of the breath. Last one. And then we'll come up. We'll bring our arms down for just a moment. Turn our feet back to the front. You can set your stick down. And I just want you to just kind of have the stick kind of close to your chest. And just feel the connection from your feet to your legs, up through, if the stick were within you, and if its tip was right at the base of your heart, how could you pull energy from the earth up? And then kind of feel it like a tornado vortexing through that heart, through all aspects of shooting rainbows, right? So this is a rainbow tornado, shooting rainbows all the way around, and it's spiraling, right? It's spiraling. So we're pulling that energy up, and we're spiraling it, and we're creating, we're being the light. And then we're going to reverse it, right? Because energy is also coming from the light into us. So from the earth through us, bringing light up into the world, but also receiving. So we're going to take that stick overhead and grasping it, extra rotation, pulling out, bringing that overhead, feeling both the right and the left sides of you, pulling energy from your hands into your shoulders. Now flip your visual so that what you're doing is you're pulling energy from the heavens down into the base of the heart, right? And now we're creating this linear relationship back to the earth, right? So we are taking this energy and spreading it back down towards our feet. Don't think about being a beam of light. Become this active, vibrating beam of light. Rainbows all around. Energy coming from the earth. Energy coming from the heavens. Couple of breaths here. And we can kind of see that we're creating those shapes with our bodies of the heart chakra, right? The heart chakra is two overlapping triangles, one pointing down, one pointing up. So we have that pointing down triangle with our arms, the pointing up triangle with our legs, and where it overlaps is exactly in the space of the heart. We've opened and found the space. As you're ready, relax out of your posture. Take a few moments. We're going to come back into a seated posture here. And you can choose your seat. Maybe you want to kneel or sit cross-legged. Maybe you want to take a nice wide position through your legs. Another option is to sit in bound angle with your knees out. We're going to take some active twists here, right? So we found this intersection. So we want a stable lower body and the capacity to move our upper body, right? So I'm going to come into that bound angle position. I'm going to use my blankets, and bound angle is the one where we bring our heels together and our knees out. I just like this position. I can feel very solid in it, very stable through my lower body. But for many people, the hip rotation is maybe a little difficult, and it causes their spine to come into flexion, to curl. So if you bring your stick around behind you, you'll find that you rock over your lower back. So make sure that whatever seat you're in, you can align the spine along the stick, right? Feeling that length. We're aware of it now. We've done a lot of movements around it. And again, I'm kind of forming with my legs that lower triangulation. And then with my arms, instead of holding the stick, I'm going to bring the hands around behind my head. So here's that upper triangulation, just with bent elbows, right? As your hands come around behind your head, you are pushing your hands into your head, but you're also pushing your head back into your hands. And I even like to take the pinky fingers and put them at the crown of the head so that I'm also pushing up into my pinkies as they're pushing down. Elbows come out wide. Elbows kind of lift up. See if you can feel that pull through your armpits. Strong center. Think about where those two triangles overlap at your heart, and the upper triangle is going to rotate, spiral in relationship to the lower triangle. And we'll take it from the center, side to side. You need to stay steady in your lower triangle and move at your waist. Stay steady in the upper triangle. So when you move, you're not collapsing or drawing your elbow forward. Those elbows are staying out wide. So we're just really, it's almost like if you can imagine that where those two triangles overlap, there's a diamond shape, and we're shining the diamond, right? We're creating this vibrancy, this heat at our center. So now start to play with your breath. And there's two ways to kind of come into this. One is to inhale as you twist and exhale as you come back to the center. The other is to reverse that, to exhale as you twist and to inhale as you come back to center. And I want you just to play with how you are breathing as you're doing this. Take a break whenever you need to. You will feel the heat of this movement, that kind of increasing shine right at the base of your heart, right? So this is happening right here, just kind of the sternum and the xiphoid process here. That's what we're turning, right? We're turning right at the base of the heart, through those lowest ribs. And we're going to take about 2 or 3 more cycles right to left. So you find your pace, you play with your breath, you bring your awareness in, you become the energy that is coming through this center channel. As you finish your last round, again, whatever pace, you know, I'm talking and moving, so my pace is kind of messed up a little bit here. I'm not as focused as you can be. And then we're going to come down, relax the shoulders. We're going to take a forward fold. You can, if you're in bound angle, you can forward fold into just this bound angle. If you feel like you'd like to take your legs wide, or bring your legs straight out in front of you, feel free to. Again, adjusting your posture in any way that feels right for you. And this is not an active forward fold. Just let your body become heavy, become ease, and not try to strive. We just did the work. Now release the work and simply be. Find your breath, let it be. Notice your heart rate. Maybe it's a little bit faster from that work, but it will slow. Maybe you follow just this incredible deep wisdom of your body to adjust and to know what you need. Again, that sense of homeostasis, which is a flux. Sense of balance, which is always shifting. Sense of being, which comes through the heart. It's not a separate structure from you. It is you, and if you are a part of the ultimate light, being cast through you, this prism that's within you, then you are light, you are love. There's no way we can objectify this. We can't scientifically define love, but we know it's there. We know it's there because we are it. This is knowing the self. Take a couple more breaths just in your forward fold. However it's manifesting. Letting go of effort. Just being love. Whenever you're ready, you'll come from your forward fold more into an upright seat. We're going to transition to our final meditation. And so I'm going to stay in a seated meditation. You can come into Shavasana. You can take any type of movements that feel delicious to you, shifting, stretching, what feels right. And then as you come into your final meditation's position, I'm going to guide you for a bit. And then I will stop the guided meditation. And I'll also be stopping the video recording and the Zoom meeting for our class today. You can stay in your meditation. I'll be guiding you through for about 5 minutes. And then I'll just quietly end. If you want to end as well, then you come out of your meditation. If you'd like to stay, stay. If we can imagine our heart as an object located in the center of our ribs, and whether we think of those ribs as protection, as cage, as holding the space, like a basket would hold a container of goods, there is still even more within that space. And it becomes mysterious. Sometimes it's referred to as the cave of the heart, the space within the space within the space. Similarly, I have the singing bowl in front of me, and it creates a space within it. There is a definition of its edges, hair ribs. And rather than a heart at the center, there's a symbol in the center of this bowl. There's a Buddha here. And the image of the Buddha is one hand touching the earth and the other hand holding the weight of the world. And he is manifesting light, creating lightness and the release of suffering in this plane of being. Buddha simply means teacher. And we're all teachers, we're all this being. We all are here in this plane of the earth, touching it. It holds us. We hold in our heart the weight of the world, the sense of separation from that light that leads to suffering. But if we remember that this is spaciousness and not closure, that sense of separation is simply a veil that can be lifted, we can feel and become that space, that light, that balance of Shiva Shakti, space and light energetically coming together. It's inside of you. When I ring the bowl, everything that's within it manifests, not just into the space of the bowl itself, but energy naturally expands out. And the tones are like the rays of the rainbow. Everything in nature has this quality. When we see leaves, there's the greenness, there's the sense of the light that comes through the leaves. There's the growth and the energetics that are happening in the roots and the funguses beneath our feet. There's the flight of the birds over our head, using air as their transit. Everything is manifesting and spreading energy. And there's never a shortage. Space and energy are always expanding, becoming you, becoming me, becoming the sound, becoming love. Knowing our true self not as an object, but as our being. We are light. We are energy. And we have the capacity to bring that light into this world and make it light. Make it love. I invite you to stay in this space, to be love. To feel the physicality of your body too, this miraculous space between being and manifesting. The space between heaven and earth that connects within you. May we be love. May we be light. Namaste.